sort of bring shape to the discussion.
Sure, I can.
Um,
Was that? Do you want an answer to that, or do you want me to kind of take some notes and?
well, yeah, just take some notes and keep those things in mind, and then I'll see if my colleagues have any questions or comments to kick it off. But I'd like us to sort of tease out the different role that a commission or an independent auditor might or might not have in each of those areas. So the administrative investigation for policies and procedures. Potentially there's an internal affairs investigation. There's some interplay there. And then potentially there's an outside investigation. And what happens when an officer determines, and I heard you touch on this a little bit, when an officer determines that he or she does not want to give a voluntary statement, and what's the impact of that decision? And I heard you touch on that, but I heard you say that in that situation, an auditor might not find it, or the city might deem it not appropriate for the auditor, inspector general to participate. I just want to confirm some of these things with you so that there's absolute transparency. Does that sum it up, Javon, sufficiently?
I think I can clarify a couple of the notion of sort of three investigations. I guess I would really call it. It's not exactly three, but I guess I can go down. There's really sort of two, Mayor. I think the three items that you referred to of the administrative investigation, the internal affairs investigation, and then perhaps an outside review, which has been done about 3 or 4 times over the last 12 years. And so to clarify, just an example, for an officer-involved shooting, there would be an administrative review. You're correct, and that would be something that's independent of what detectives might be investigating for.
Right.
For whether there's any criminality to the event. So again, internal affairs investigators would be doing an administrative review. If that review yielded a determination by the chief that the matter was out of policy, then they would initiate an internal affairs investigation to assess the measure of discipline.
I want to be absolutely clear on this. So the first review, and I do consider it an investigation, is an administrative review. You said internal affairs, but I think you meant
right, administrative review, right? And basically, this is all it's all in the personnel sense. It's all internal affairs staff. They do all that, and so in that context, that's where if officers are asked to be interviewed by detectives, if they give a voluntary statement to detectives, sometimes for internal affairs that's enough. Sometimes internal affairs might want to interview the officers further. In some instances, officers might choose to exercise their Fifth Amendment right not to give a statement to detectives, which the officers have a right to do, and at which point internal affairs would have no statement. So they would definitely want to take a statement from the officers. Because they are internal affairs investigators, in order to take a statement from the officers, they have to issue what's called a compelled statement. But that statement, the way it's explained to the officers under case law, is that it cannot be used against the officers in a criminal proceeding, but it's merely to conduct the personnel investigation.
Right, and that's but so that becomes part of the administrative. And that's what I mean by an administrative investigation. If an officer says, I'm not going to give a voluntary statement, then it becomes essentially there's an administrative investigation while internal affairs also reviews the matter. Or in our department, is it one and the same? Most departments separate the two issues.
The administrative review and the internal affairs?
Yeah.
I think that's just, from my understanding, this is just how Pasadena does it. I'm not sure specifically how other agencies might sort of split things up or separate things up, but it's all one personnel investigation. And I guess, Mayor, in terms of, you also had mentioned an outside investigation, which sometimes we have had outside reviews conducted by, for example, OIR Group or National Police Foundation.
No, I'm referring to, the matter gets referred to the district attorney or somehow the district.
I see.
That's
Okay.
when
I see. And yes, okay. And so when the matter might get referred to the district attorney, that's for whether there may be a crime committed through the incident. And same thing if it were referred to the Attorney General's office or the FBI, they would look at it for any criminality. But for personnel review, that's just something that the department would be doing. And the idea of the police officer personnel records are something that really is items that Internal Affairs largely would be developing.
Now, but my understanding is is there someone from the police department who can help us clarify? Because I am under the impression that we separate administratively and then internal affairs. But if you're confident that, it's one and the same, I'm happy to accept that, but I would ask us to double check. There's a point in an administrative review typically where it shifts to to an internal affairs. But initially it's just a review, but I may be wrong about it.
So Mayor, I thought that Deputy Chief Moody was going to be joining us via Zoom, but let me try based on my understanding. And I think in part, the clarity that you were looking for the people watching is to perhaps understand where the IPA has a role in which of these various investigations. So let's assume there's an officer-involved shooting. There's the administrative review, which is
policies, procedures, practices.
Right. Did an officer adhere to departmental policies, procedures? There's also the criminal review, and then there's the district attorney team comes in to take a look at whether they believe perhaps a crime may have been committed that they would file on or not. And so,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, I think Deputy Chief Moody is with us. Cheryl, I was just laying out for the committee and those watching, in the wake of, let's use an example of an officer-involved shooting, we have several types of reviews that occur: an administrative review, a criminal review, and then the district attorney undertakes their review of the incident. Did I state that correctly?
That's correct, sir. And we do start with the criminal. Actually, there's another review. It's basic. They come out initially and they look at it. That's the Department of Justice. And then we have the criminal side is done. Then it goes to the district attorney, and then we do the administrative review.
So it's the other way around.
Correct.
And so in a use of force, I just want to understand the sequencing that we follow. Typically departments will have three reviews. There's an administrative review, there's an internal affairs or a use of force review, and then potentially it gets sent out elsewhere.
Yes, we do the criminal side first.
You do the criminal side, okay. And so so internal affairs immediately becomes involved.
No. The criminal side is done by the detectives, by criminal detectives. The administrative review is done by the internal affairs section. So the criminal side is done first. Then it goes to the DA's office to look at any criminal matters related to the officer and any crimes that have been committed by the subject that's been injured. And then then the administrative side is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps me understand the sequencing. Mr. Madison has joined us and.
Thank you. Mayor, I just wanted to point out that there's also the possibility of a federal criminal investigation. As I think we all know, Section 1983 provides that it's a federal crime to violate civil rights under color of law. Mm-hmm. So there could also be a federal investigation, sometimes conducted by the FBI or the U.S. Department of Justice. The other thing is that I understand and I don't want, kind of an aside, I think the new deputy, or the new district attorney rather, in LA County is, having quite an adventure with some of the reforms that he's trying to impose. But I understand that he may be forming a whole new unit for the purpose of investigating police officers, which is concerning, and also, something that bears consideration in terms of this conversation that we're having as well.
And the only reason to tease these out is because I think it's important for the community to understand there potentially there are multiple investigations, some of which even our own department may not have a role in. And I want to make sure that people set expectations appropriately for a police auditor, for a police commission, and that we're transparent about it and clear from the beginning. So that's all I'm trying to lay out, is give shape to our discussion. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Hampton, did you have anything, or did you want to move straight to public comment?
Mayor, I'd like to hear from the public to, just like you had mentioned, to frame the issues so we as a body would maybe be influenced to ask additional questions or provide clarification on some issues during this process that we would be recommending to the full council for decision. So that's my 2 cents at this point.
Okay. Mr. Hampton?
Mayor, I will say that this has been an issue that has been ongoing for some time, and I feel like there was a lot of teasing out that went with the previous council at this point. It's almost like the Twilight Zone a little bit. I mean, I feel like we're starting back over from scratch, but based on some of the questions from our last council meeting, as well as now. And of course, things are going to change frequently, regularly. There are going to be other things that may be beneficial to the average everyday citizen. I don't think that should hinder the work that we have already moved. I mean, this is not the proposal that I would have supported. Right. Of course, I did support the proposal because this is what we had. I think that there are things that we could do that are significantly more productive, more meaningful, that would hold people more accountable for bad actions. But at this point, I would like to hear the public comment. I thought that we were going to have the conversation about what organizations we are going to choose that would have an opportunity to put 3 seats, or what organizations will be part of a panel to have applicants on this commission, what the framework of that commission is going to look like, who's going to get what years, the training. That's the conversation I thought we were having today. But it almost sounds like the conversation is back to, let's rethink this whole entire commission. No. And I hope but maybe that's just what the perception I'm getting. And maybe I'm totally wrong, but I'm just hoping that that's not the conversation, and that we've already voted on something. We've sent out applications, and now it's, the ability of what the IPA would have, we agreed on.
Yeah.
So,
but the city attorney was just reporting.
Mayor, you lost audio.
I'm sorry. Am I there?
Mm-hmm.
The city attorney just was responding to some of these issues, and I just wanted to put them in context to ensure that I understood it and that the public understood the context of why the city attorney was reporting that out in his presentation under the confidentiality section of our report. But I understand your points, Mr. Hampton. So why don't we just jump into public comment, and then we'll come back and see what the comments might be from the committee members.
Thank you.
Sonia Barnett, Pasadena resident. I am a longtime resident of Pasadena and a retired state prosecutor. I listened to previous city council discussions about establishing a community police oversight commission and listened to hundreds of comments from Pasadenians detailing what is needed to help mend the divide between law enforcement and the community and to help mend the divide between law enforcement and the community, and to help the community begin to trust law enforcement again. I listened to specific detailed ideas for creating an effective independent police auditor, IPA, and CPOC that would have provided the community with a significant seat at the table during discussions of significant issues such as racism, discriminatory enforcement, excessive force, and policing persons experiencing mental illness. The ordinance that resulted and the proposed rules and regulations are not what the community asked for. While there was much discussion about the need for racial and cultural diversity and for a mix of persons with a variety of knowledge and expertise, 8 out of the 11 members will be chosen by individual members of the council, with no meaningful input from the community and no consideration of diversity. Further, the subpoena power of the IPA and the CPOC is so limited as to be rendered worthless. Our city deserves better. Cindy Smith, Pasadena resident. After reading the post on PPD's conspiracy to cover up the evidence of the murder of Anthony McLean and the post on the corruption in the McLean investigation, I wonder why the video on PPD's website did not mention that Anthony McLean had a cell phone in his left hand. PPD's video shows a conversation between Anthony McLean and the officer about the cell phone while sitting in his car. This would confirm that PPD conspired to cover evidence because this supported the 163 days of posting on Facebook that Anthony McLean was unarmed at the time he was shot in the back. It's more offensive that PPD posted the video on their website showing their egregious action, and Chief Perez dismissed it because Anthony McLean was a Black man. I guess the city of Pasadena and its leaders don't care about its reputation when it comes to Black people. Or maybe Pasadena just wants another scandal to make the city look bad, like a bunch of white racists who are out of touch with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. How can a police oversight commission work when the police are corrupted, and don't comply with the law under AB 392? Olden Denham, Pasadena resident. I read the post regarding corruption in the Anthony McLean investigation, and I'm outraged to learn of the cover-up with the same 2 policemen who made the traffic stop. PPD's videos show the same 2 officers involved. One, the lookout person to make sure the black handgun was brought into the crime scene. The policeman that murdered Anthony McLean was the one on PPD's video to pick up the gun after being dropped off at the crime scene by PPD vehicle. This clearly makes the policeman the one who planted the gun in front of the park. This explains why there was no PPD video that actually showed a gun on the street, or why no policeman found the gun during the search of the area immediately after Anthony was shot twice in the back. Only a still picture as Exhibit 7 taken when the sky was pitch black, which makes it much later in time after the shooting as the only evidence of a gun. This is some old school tactics, planting a throwaway gun, then lying about it. The 2 officers should be fired immediately and referred the case to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. Anthony B. Shea, Pasadena resident. PPD's videos established corruption and a cover-up in the Anthony McLean shooting. I had a brief conversation with Chief Perez. I expressed to him this was done with the video released by PPD and different articles. I expressed to him my advocacy for the residents of the Northwest and done respectively and openly. PPD's video revealed an officer's last four numbers on his body cam was 3597 and without gloves was omitted from PPD's website. He walked on the east side of Raymond and passed the gun after seeing it with his flashlight. Made a confirmation while it was daylight. The second officer picked up the gun with gloves. His last four numbers 3076. Video body-worn camera number 2 from PPD's website showed the second officers picking up the gun. Body cam number 3076 from 5:15 to 5:21 on the timeline shows a black handgun. At 5:22, the officers are asked by another officer, "Is that it?" The officer with number 3076 states no. At 5:43 on the timeline, the same officer appears to place the gun in his pocket. PPD did not indicate it as evidence from the crime scene. There is no PPD video to support that Anthony McLean had possession of a gun. Al Haymond, Pasadena resident. I reviewed the video footage on the police website on the Anthony McLean's shooting and was outraged to see from the video that McLean did not have a gun and there was nothing to show that made threats upon the officer. I saw the video where the officers with the last four numbers of his body cam is 3076 was the officer that shot McLean and the same officer to pick up the gun in the second video on the website. How come it was not mentioned by Chief Perez that the gun, or if it was not a gun, why was the object not shown as evidence collected from a crime scene? Why didn't the video mention the cell phone McLean held in his left hand? Why didn't the video show McLean's cell phone as evidence collected from a crime scene? Why didn't the video explain the gun or object the officers picked up was on the east side of Raymond Avenue? How will an oversight commission control this type of conduct of officers? Ryan Bell, Pasadena resident. It is vitally important that the city gets the criteria for the PPD Oversight Commission right. There are several concerns about the current approach being taken. Due to space limits, I'll mention just one. City Council has stipulated that Public Safety Committee should discuss the commissioner's selection criteria only for the 3 community-based organizations represented. These 3 appointments will be the only chance to ensure that commissioners, A, represent or demonstrate knowledge of the experiences of limited English speakers, persons experiencing homelessness, and/or people living with mental illnesses and/or substance use disorders, and B, represent or more of the following communities: Black, Indigenous, persons of color, immigrant, refugee, LGBTQ, youth, faith, business, and other communities reflecting the overall demographics of Pasadena residents. All members of the commission as a whole need to be represented. The diversity of our city and represent the diversity of our city and understand the unique circumstances of the over-policed, specifically residents of Northwest Pasadena, and they need to be adequately trained. Just this past weekend, Jasmine Richards was harassed by PPD who prominently displayed a thin blue line patch on their uniform. Commissioners need to be well versed in the nuisance of this violent, racist, and white supremacist symbols. Frank Barwa, Pasadena resident. As a resident of District 7, I am very concerned about Pasadena police not complying with the state law AB 392 in the McLean shooting, but want us to believe a police oversight commission will achieve effective results. I believe that the police department should comply with the state law before we can believe this committee could create policies and procedures. Edward Wishaka on behalf of Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, POP. POP applauds the City Council's historic move to create the Community Police Oversight Commission. We are asking this committee to make 2 modifications to the Council's resolution of January 25th. According to the resolution, commissioners will serve 3-year terms with initial terms to be staggered at 1, 2, or 3 years. However, commission members representing community-based organizations will be appointed for a 1-year term at the start. As a result, these members will serve the shortest term of all commissioners at the onset, and those 3 seats will make up a class that experiences expirations always at the same time. It would be more equitable if each of the community-based seats were also staggered initially at 1, 2, and 3-year terms. Lastly, it is critical that all commissioners receive education in trauma-informed care, as well as anti-racism training. POP feels it is crucial that all commissioners be trained to understand the psychological and social circumstances under which community members interact with law enforcement, and how officers' biases and assumptions can impact their interaction with the police. Such training would positively impact the leadership and governance of the commission. Thank you for your further consideration. That concludes public comment.
Are you frozen, Mayor? Mayor?
Yeah,
Mayor
maybe I
Gordo,
can,
it's difficult
hear me?
to hear you and
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mayor Gordo? Mayor Gordo?
I think the mayor is frozen up.
Okay,
Let me go check.
okay.
John,
Yes, sir.
go ahead. I'm having,
May I go ahead, Mayor?
yeah, I'll just come in, yeah. John, I'm gonna move into the council chambers.
Okay, I'll wait, no problem.
Sorry about that, folks. The connection in the office was not so good, so, well, Mr. Kennedy, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to, I know this isn't an agendized item, but I'd like to understand if staff could share with the Public Safety Committee what was the reference about a flag on the uniform of an officer. And if we can't talk about it today, Javon, I think you could educate us at another Public Safety Committee meeting, but certainly I think it deserves a quick education either now or later.
Well, Councilmember Kennedy, I think I understand that someone was referencing that an officer had a patch that had American flag with the blue line on it. I'll follow up with the police department. I don't have any more information on that, but I'll be looking
Okay, thank
into
you.
it.
Thank you very much, City Manager. The issue about staggered terms is a legitimate issue, and I'd like to know, is there a way to accommodate that particular question or concern in the manner in which we've addressed the 8 members that the City Council will appoint to the commission or nominate to the full City Council for appointment?
And Councilmember Kennedy, I'm so, the question on staggered terms?
That question would relate specifically to those, I think it's 3 members, if I've got this right, for the organizational recommendations or nominees to the City Council.
So the resolution the council adopted sets forth the staggered terms, and so.
If it's moot, then I don't want to waste any time.
Okay,
As the council,
yes, Councilmember Kennedy, the timing on the staggered terms was adopted by the council
Okay.
with resolution 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you very much. And then as it relates to, we've already dealt with the confidentiality of police records. There was no issue there. We're following what the state law requires and any other recognized law related to confidentiality of records. So no problem there. As it relates to the appointees in terms of the expiration of terms, it's already been set by the council. What was, and then the mayor and the deputy police chief, Cheryl Moody, gave us the high-level process in terms of how investigations take place, along with Councilmember Madison sharing what some of us were aware of, which is equally true, that the federal government has the right to come in and provide investigations as well. I am very much interested in Ed Washatka's, I think, second part of his comments related to any member of the commission receiving anti-racism or implicit bias training. He didn't use the word implicit bias training, but trauma-informed care, because so many of the cases that are difficult for our officers in Pasadena, but certainly across the country, involve individuals who have some kind of mental crisis at that moment. And so I think it would be wise if this committee could recommend that that be a part of the training that we've already anticipated, and anti-racism training as well. So I think those 2 items are worthy for additional consideration by this body to add to or augment the training that each member of the commission will have to undergo to be a full commissioner, meaning have the requisite knowledge and training to serve on that body. So that's my quick comments, and I would like to thank Javon and whoever else worked on the agenda report. I think it's pretty much on base to what we were seeking as a body, and I'm very much interested in learning more about the concerns that my colleagues may have. And then lastly, the whole objective at this point is not to have a perfect model. A good model may get us to a perfect model or a more perfect union. So we'll go through iterations, and the council will hear how well we're doing. The commission will present to possibly public safety and the city council. We'll learn something. This is novel for Pasadena. So we're not going to get everything right the first time. That's almost impossible. But this is a very good start. And it certainly has involved all of the community who wanted to participate and the members of the city council then and now are participating to make sure this goes as well as possible. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. If there is, Mr. Madison, Mr. Hampton, did you have comments, Mr. Madison?
I guess I'm a little confused. There are 3 attachments to the staff report. Javon, you were talking about things we'd already decided. Which of the 3 attachments have already been adopted?
So the 3 attachments, the first and the third attachment have been adopted by the council. The second, the rules and regs, have not. So the first attachment is the ordinance setting up the commission. What's not included is the portion of the municipal code that establishes the position of police auditor. That's in another portion of the code. The second attachment is the proposed rules and regs that the council referred back to the committee for discussion, which is here today. Attachment 3 is the resolution the council adopted at the January 25th meeting, setting forth the policy of appointment of members. I will say Councilmember Hampton had raised the question of perhaps some further discussion by this committee of how the community-based organization members, the 3 community-based organization members, might be selected. That was addressed in the agenda report, but I didn't put it in the PowerPoint, but it is in the agenda report, and that was something the council had suggested, that there could be further discussion and perhaps exposition without the need to memorialize that portion in the resolution. But Councilmember Kennedy's question about staggered terms was part of the reso. Okay, so just to try to bring some order here to the proceedings, are we, and I don't mean that as a criticism of anyone, probably I'm the only one that's having trouble here, but from staff's perspective, what are the issues that we need to tee up and to decide in terms of recommending to the full council? Rules and regulations. The proposed rules and regulations that are attached to the council. Okay, but some of those things you're telling us are already dictated by the attachments 1 and 3. So, for example, we've already decided that the community-based organization representatives will be a 1-year term, correct? Yes. Okay, so we shouldn't debate that because, as Councilmember Kennedy indicated, that's moot. Yes. Okay. So what else is there in the rules and regulations that? I think one item that is in the rules and regulations that that is not found in other commissions and necessarily was what perhaps is there an interest in constraining what the commission should see? For example, if matters are pending personnel or criminal investigations, should the commission be able to take those items up? The draft suggests no, but this is something the council could consider. Okay, well, my position on that is that it would be unlawful for us to share those materials, and it would also be terrible public policy. So I would support the draft if it says that. There was another provision here, section 3, that says if a member of the commission wishes to resign, that he or she communicates to the mayor and city council and to the chair of the commission. I know when my commissioners consider a resignation, they reach out to me, the person who nominated them. And sometimes that results in a resignation, sometimes it doesn't. Why would we depart from that practice here? I'm actually borrowing language from some other city boards and commissions language. So this is something that you're right, Councilmember Madison, it's perhaps more than the council might want. So that is something the council could deliberate. Yeah, I would recommend that we say that any member seeking to resign shall, communicate
that intent to the member or council member, mayor, or full council that nominated him or her.
And practically, I think, speaking, that does happen, as we all know. But I think it's a procedural matter too, Mr. Madison, because the JANA and the council office has to agendize it for formal action. Staff, and so I think we need to have both.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a problem in that regard. I mean, my view, Mayor, is that for a commission like this, which is uncharted territory, there are lots of legal minefields and potential issues. I'd be more comfortable with each member having the ability to control those appointments, but I think that's already in attachments 1 and 3.
Yeah. At some point, the individual resigning has to notify formally the city.
Right.
But the city council's formal, I guess, notification is when in the agenda when we vote to accept it. But I have no problem with including a step before that.
Thank you. And I think usually the way it works is often we will then forward the note,
yeah,
which usually expresses gratitude, and we express regret, and then agendize it. But I'd appreciate some
yeah,
language in there like that. So,
that's
and then have we addressed which members of the commission would occupy which terms of the staggered terms? That is, how will we decide which commissioners will be in the 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year terms?
So Councilmember Madison, that's in the resolution, and in short, let me just go to the section.
the nonprofits.
Is that just speaking to the nonprofits or for those appointed by the council?
No.
The nonprofits are easy. They're just 1 year each.
Yes.
I'm
right.
talking about the 2, 3, and 4 year.
So for the,
By pulling of lots.
you're right, for the count, there's 5 council members, including the mayor, whose terms expire in 2024. So there's only 4 slots for the 3-year term. So the council would either deliberate and decide on which 4 of the 5 get a 3-year term, and if that cannot be, it says the four appointees to the 3-year term shall be drawn by lot. So that's that would sort out the 5 council members and 4 3-year terms. There's 4 2-year terms. So one of the 2-year terms would be from a council member whose term expires in 2024, and for all the council members whose term expires in 2022, get a 2-year term for an initial appointment. But again, everybody is staggered for the initial term. Everybody gets a second term. It can be reappointed for a second term, and that would be 3 years. So this complexity is just a one-time thing, Councilmember Madison.
Okay, what I'm reading is 4 of the 5 council members nominees will be appointed to a 3-year initial term.
Yes.
So which 4?
And so at the next sentence, the 4 appointees to the 3-year initial term shall be drawn by lot.
Out of the 5 potential
Yes.
nominees. Okay. Okay. Those are the only questions I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hampton?
Yeah, the questions I had about were, are we gonna talk about the potential community groups? Isn't that today?
Councilmember Hampton, that was one of the inquiries from the council, the January 25th meeting, in terms of providing some, whether the committee wished to provide some additional exposition on how the nominees from the community groups would be selected. So that was one of the things the council wanted to see the committee review. I provided a little overview of the resolution in the agenda report, but that is a topic that the council wanted to see, and I did touch on in the agenda report with just what the process is. So the question for the committee is, would the committee like to see any greater level of detail beyond what's in the resolution?
So on page 2 of the staff report, we have outlined the issues that were referred by the council, correct, Javon?
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have the potential for item A, and this is where we should focus our attention. The appointment process and whether that's stated in the I'm sorry, is it the resolution or the regulation?
I can go through sort of what the resolution says briefly, Mayor, if that might help set the table.
Yeah, please.
So
I think that's what Mr. Madison was driving at. We need to define exactly what it is you need us to decide. And I took it as item A, B, and C, and D. Is that correct?
yes, and that's what the agenda report covers, right? So for the appointment process, the council did adopt an appointment process through the resolution. So if the committee feels the resolution is sufficient, then there may be no further action needed. If the committee would like to see some more exposition, this is what's in the resolution itself. Basically, as the committee's discussed, the 3 community-based organization appointees would have 1-year term, and right now, 1-year initial term, and then 3-year terms after that. So the question is, how would they get appointed? Right now, the resolution says that staff would publicize the opportunity and then receive the applications, and those applications would be presented to the Public Safety Committee. Right now, the resolution doesn't state any sort of staff recommendation or anything like that. If there's an application received from a community-based organization, again, all commission members must be Pasadena residents as well. But also, if there's an application received from the community-based organizations, then those applications would be referred to the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee, initially, because there's 3 openings, the committee would review the applications, recommend 3 nominees to the city council, and then the council would consider those for appointment. This would make it to the council agenda similarly to how an individual council member would nominate, but this would come as Mr. or Mrs. X nominated by the Public Safety Committee.
Well, but the only distinction here is from typically the recommendation comes for a nomination for a commission from a member of the city council, and that nomination is voted up or down. The distinction that we have here is that the council can consider other applicants. It's part of its deliberation.
Yes, and that's correct, Mayor. So the council first has to consider whoever the Public Safety Committee nominated, but as long as an application was submitted, the council could then move on to other applicants and could select one of those.
And what was the rationale? I'm sorry, Mr. Hampton, if I may just clarify.
No, go ahead and clarify, because I'm trying to get to the point where, I'm trying to get some clarity as well, because I thought today we were going to pick what organization would have a pick.
No, so today is procedural. So what's before us is what we just discussed, the appointment process. The Public Safety Committee receives applications, so we need to decide if we want to impose a deadline for the initial, and then whether we would recommend and the council would vote those recommendations up or down, or whether we would accept other applications as the council together with the recommendation of the commission. And that's the committee, the Public Safety Committee. That's what the confusing part is to me, Mr. Red. What's the rationale behind bringing it to the Public Safety Committee? The committee, if there's consensus on a recommendation, it seems like we would reopen the whole discussion at City Council, potentially.
Mayor, in terms of as to the appointment process,
Yes.
I think
That's different. That's different than our typical appointment process. That's why I'm asking. Is there a rationale for it, or
for
we-
why why the process is at the committee level instead of back at the council to amend the resolution? I think the thinking was, given the council's
No. The recommendation, as stated in page 2 of the report, is the committee would review the application, submit at least 3 nominations to the council to consider. The council would first consider the committee's nominations, but the council could also consider other applications at that same, I'm imagining at that same meeting. And so what's the rationale for that process? Because that's different than our typical nominations process. So, a member of the city council recommends, and then, the council takes it up and votes on it.
Right.
Here we have a very different process where it comes to this committee gets to, I guess, take a first look at applicants, have discussion, come up with 3 names to recommend to the full city council, but then the council can vote it up or down.
Right.
So I'm just wondering why we deviated from our normal
and I think that
nomination.
This got arrived at starting back in the fall when we were bringing the ordinance forward. We were trying to put in terms of putting the ordinance together about how many committee members or who would nominate. My understanding at the time was the council didn't want to have a particular council member behind the nomination of the community-based organizations. And so the way the ordinance read was, we'll put that down. The ordinance gets adopted, but there will be a resolution explaining how the community-based organization members are nominated. So that at least gets the ordinance in, it defers it to the resolution. So then when the resolution came to the council, this was the proposal of trying to give some level of discussion and dialogue among sufficient members of the council without putting a particular name behind a candidate.
And so, you're refreshing my memory now. So we would follow for our own personal or individual appointments, I should say, the typical process, but it's only these 3 that would come here, and then we would sort of screen for the council and make a recommendation.
Yes,
at
ma'am.
this committee. Okay, got it. And so that's one point of decision. Do we agree with that we have to make today?
And I think Councilmember Hampton's question of, in terms of refinement, if the council wanted to sort of discuss how they might either solicit or arrive at appropriate community-based organization nominees, I think depending on what the council or what this committee might want to do, there may be ways we can structure that without requiring an amendment to the resolution. And I think that's where Michelle had expressed that on the floor, and I would agree. I think there may be some room to discuss and refine without a need to amend the resolution.
Okay, this does seem like we're rehashing old territory here.
And again, the council's not compelled to make changes to the resolution either, though.
The objective from the full council, Mayor, and we all need our memory refreshed, not just you, is there an appropriate role for public safety? Seemingly, all of the council members said yes. So we're just trying to, I believe, do our part to recommend to the full council, if that helps. And obviously, as you know, the council doesn't have to take any recommendation from the Public Safety Committee, but it seemed like this was the right venue for us to stay involved with helping this process be successful by ferrying out the issues by, you know,
Yeah,
2 practicing attorneys, a former federal prosecutor, someone who has some background in policing, another council member who really has a heartbeat for the community, and particularly those who want to stay engaged in this area. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
yeah.
I don't see a lot of consternation as to moving forward. I think Ed Washatka had some legitimate concerns. I put them on the floor for consideration. I think Councilmember Hampton's concern about how we have those 3 members, I think there's an avenue that's already on the table for that, for the Public Safety Committee to either say, yes, that works, or let's modify it a bit, and then let's move this.
So why don't we take them one at a time? Mr. Hampton, why don't you wrap it up, and we'll just take one issue at a time and give and make a decision. Mr. Hampton?
You know, I'm fine with wrapping it up, because maybe I'm confused about the process, but I thought that today we were gonna come here, talk about how the community members were going to be picked through the community groups, and what community groups were gonna be on that panel, or what community groups would have the opportunity to enlist names. But it doesn't sound like that to me. It sounds like there's gonna be like 3 names and their community members, which in turns to me is exactly what we're all doing, because everybody who's going to be on the commission is going to be live in Pasadena anyways. So they're all technically community members. I thought we were going to say, okay, I'm not trying to throw names out or say that this organization has to be on this list. I thought we were going to say something like, okay, there are 5 organizations that do work in this field, line of police, and, you know, or social justice. And we were going to say these 5 organizations, or these 3 organizations out of the 5 are going to have nominees. That's what I thought. So I mean, maybe that's not how, I mean, that's just how I thought it was always presented to me. So, you know,
Go ahead.
that was all I had.
Okay. And so the question is, under item 2, the matters that were referred, let's take them up one at a time. Is there any concern related to, and Mr. City Attorney, this is the direction you're looking for, correct, on each of these items?
Well, I think, I don't know that we're looking for action necessarily from the committee on these items. I think it's more, we're trying to respond to inquiries from the council. If the committee wants to take something up, it absolutely has the prerogative to do so.
No, I said direction. So you're just looking for direction to whether or not we're going to change. So
it seems to me, Mayor, that.
So why don't we take them up one at a time? Mr. Kennedy, go ahead.
It seems to me, Mayor, that our colleagues have placed in us or reposed in us a reasonable expectation that we would give them something and they can still change it. But they want to know, for example, if public safety unanimously agrees to X, that has a little bit of weight.
Right. So so what I'm suggesting is let's take them one at a time and give direction to whether or not we think the way it's stated, the process for the appointment process for the 3 members is acceptable to us, and give direction to the city attorney, and we can report back to the council and move on with the appointment process. So in terms of item A, does any member of the committee have any changes to suggest? Are we good with the way it's stated? What's the will of the committee? Is there a motion? Well, I don't think we need a motion. I don't see a reason to change it, personally.
Mayor, I think it's stronger if the body is in fact unanimous, that the total council knows that we're unanimous.
Fair enough. So I'll entertain a motion to on item A.
I so move.
Okay. You move to keep it as it is.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Madison, Mr. Hampton?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion, Mayor. I guess, what's the process then? Are we setting a deadline for submission of the?
We're just taking them one at a time. So this is just the appointment process for community-based organizations. It's 2A.
Okay, and then we'll take up deadlines and process
And we'll just take
for
one
all
at
of
a
the,
time.
fair enough.
Yeah,
So I'll second Mr. Kennedy's motion.
okay. And so,
I'm sorry, Javon, before I vote on this, can you clarify this again?
Sure. So what I understand Councilmember Kennedy's motion is it's basically the committee's belief that the resolution provides the level of detail needed, and there's no further direction or suggestions needed by the committee in terms of how to guide or so limit the council in how it might select the community-based organization members.
basically, in practice, Mr. Hampton, is we, the Public Safety Committee, would receive applications from community-based organizations. We would review them. That's when we would have the discussion that I believe you're thinking about. And we would then forward to the City Council 3 names, and the council would consider those 3 names. And if the 3 names are accepted, then those are the appointees. If they're not, then the council could consider other applicants. Is that correct, Mr. Red?
Yes, and without having to sort of start the process anew.
Right.
So I would be fine with this, with an amendment that would say that these committees have to have been working in this space. I mean, otherwise you're gonna get Pasadena Heritage with a nominee.
But
I don't think that's a I mean, I don't think that originally when putting this together, we were just thinking, okay, well, you know, we're gonna let any community organization, you know, Kid Space could have a space. I mean, that's the reason why I was trying to figure out what are the list of community organizations that we are going to accept to take applications from.
Well, I think initially we cast that broadly and let people make their argument, and then the discussion would occur here, and the issues that you're raising would be taken up. I mean, you know, that's, I suspect, going to be either a very long discussion because there's a lot of interest and a lot of people who say, you know, we work in this space, as you say, or this is the rationale for us applying, or for me applying as an individual who is involved with the community-based organization. And then we have to make the determination.
Well, you know, I appreciate that. I disagree because based on, I would have said the Tournament of Roses if it wasn't where we're at right now. I mean, I'm just saying, based on the way there are relationships that have been built with some of these communities, and I mean, some of these organizations that have had a lot of goodwill within communities, and to say that the NAACP wouldn't have a opportunity to have a seat here, or CCOP, who's been a part of this from the beginning, right? I mean, wouldn't have an opportunity to really, I mean, they have an opportunity to submit somebody, but realistically, I mean, just like anything else though, I mean, we could just say no, but I think that we should have community-based organizations that have been in this space, that have been fighting for this from day one, to be able to solidify them and say, you know what? You could, I don't know, you could hang up because if your Mandarin teacher's not coming, she's not gonna come. Sorry about that.
Councilmember Hampton, if I may, I think you make a good point that there's certainly some community-based organizations that have been far more involved than others, and others who have had no involvement in this issue whatsoever. I think the way that the language is crafted provides the council the latitude to take into consideration the things that you're mentioning. I'm sure the council will factor that in making the decisions. I think one concern is if we prescribe which community-based organizations may put a name in nomination, the council will be spending a lot of time dealing with other community-based organizations who feel that they should have been included. And of course, you're going to adopt this, and if downstream a new coalition, a new group arises who could add a lot of value but somehow wasn't included in the first instance. So I think the flexibility provides the council to still do what you want and not locking yourself in and then potentially creating a bit of a skirmish with other groups who feel that they ought to be able to at least put a name in nomination.
Yeah, I don't think we want to, I don't think we want to predetermine at this stage.
No, I'm not trying to predetermine. Well, that's what I'm trying to get at is, I'm not trying to predetermine who the groups are going to be. What I'm trying to say is it should be in writing somewhere where it says these groups have a history or have a track record of working in this space. You know, just because, you know, if a new organization that came up, like there's a couple new organizations that have been fantastic and working in the space, Breed Justice being one, right? If some organization that has never ever worked in this space that has a track record of working within our community all of a sudden is now given an opportunity to apply for one of these positions over the organizations that have been working in this space, that's my reticence. And that's the reason why I'm asking that the wording be so that it is the organizations that work in this space and not just the Tournament of Roses or any other organization that decides, you know, hey, you know, I've got friends on the city council and we can make an appointment.
Mayor, this is Javon. One, to clarify, maybe refresh the committee, when the council was deliberating on the ordinance back in September, October, one of the options that was presented for the 8 council member appointees was some police commissions encourage current or former law enforcement to be members, and other commissions prohibit law enforcement from being appointed. And this council decided to take no view on it and rather just give each person's sort of application the weight it deserves in the concept of appointment. So I think the one sort of way the community-based organization was structured, it's a fairly broad definition. I think Councilmember Kennedy's right. But I think the committee and the council can give the applications the weight they deserve as they come through.
Yeah. No, I agree. Mr. Madison, did you have something to add? I think we understand the points, but I think casting the net broadly and letting people make the argument as to why they're qualified is what we should do.
I agree. It's just, we can't legislate this down to a fare thee well. The Tournament of Roses will not be on this committee. I can guarantee you that.
Thank you for taking me literally all the time. I just threw that out there.
No, Mr. Hampton, that wasn't the explanation for that. That was just an opportunity for humor that I couldn't pass up.
No, I know. I'm just playing with you. That's why I use the Tournament of Roses as an example.
You guys are getting me in trouble. All right, so let's proceed. Mr. Hampton, are you okay with proceeding? I do think that casting the net broadly, letting people make the argument is, you know, we should have the best and most qualified applicants have an opportunity. Everyone should have an opportunity to apply, and then the council is elected to exercise its judgment, and we'll take a crack at it first here at this committee and make our best informed recommendation and see what our colleagues on the council think about that, and we'll have choices to make.
So I am fine with moving this forward to the full city council. I, on this piece of it, will not vote yes. But you know, I'm ready for the vote. Are we voting on each individual?
Yeah, I don't think this is going back. We're either going to recommend a change or we're going to accept it as is. It's already been to the council.
Right. No, that's fine. Oh, okay. Then I guess if that's the case, it's gonna be accepted as is, because, I mean, it's 3 versus 1. I know I can do the math.
So there's a motion and a second, roll call?
Councilmember Hampton,
No, because I think we need to clarify those organizations.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yeah,
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Chair Gordo.
Yes. And again, the intent is to cast the net broadly so that all those who want to participate, believe they're qualified, can do so. But I understand the point Mr. Hampton is making. So Mr. Rad, that will not go back to the council, correct? We'll move on to item B.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. So the next item is whether we want to recommend the imposition of a deadline for initial applications for commission seats. Is there a view from committee?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of anybody. I didn't know if anybody put their hand up.
No, go ahead.
I think we should have a deadline. The city attorney's office just flew out the position, so I think our deadline should be as we get applications in for who that IPA would be. I personally think that the commissioners, just like we do with any other public employee, commissioner should have an opportunity to at least review the applicants that are applying for this position.
Okay, so this would be for the initial round. We always accept applications for appointments, but
yeah, only for the initial round, just because right now the IPAs, the job opportunity is already flown out, and I don't know when. Javon, when does that? When do you guys get applications in? Or I'm sure you're already getting applications in, but when does that deadline end?
Councilmember Hampton, the deadline for submitting proposals for the independent police auditor, which would be a contracted position, is, I believe, 2 weeks from Thursday. So I think the 25th of February.
How many applications have you received so far?
I do not know how many we have presently.
okay.
I think we put it on the street about a week and a half ago. And it's available on the city attorney's website, as well as Planet Bids, which is the city's vendor portal.
And the city attorney's office plans on reviewing all of those applications and then making a selection.
Right.
Okay, and so that's the reason why I think, personally, why I think that the commission should have some ability or some insights on who the top 3 or top 4 or even all of the applicants that have come in to suggest to the city attorney's office who they believe would be the best pick. Just my opinion.
Yeah, what is contemplated at the moment, Mr. Rad, in terms of process and?
Mr. Mayor, I think basically what we will have the applications on proposals on hand in response to the request for proposal for the independent police auditor by the end of right within the next couple of weeks. So end of February, early March, we'd review the proposals, and I think depending on the amount, then that would either be selected by the city attorney, or it would be presented to the city council for award of a contract. And I think to Councilmember Hampton's point, if the desire were to have commission members involved in the process, I think that's something we certainly could take direction from the council on, but it would delay the award of contract for auditor. And I think one of the things the council desired at the meeting 2 weeks ago was for the auditor to at least be involved in the rules and regulations in terms of opining on what the auditor may think about the rules and regs that are in front of the committee today as well.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Madison?
The process could in fact mirror what we do presently, Mayor, and that is each council member and the mayor may have a vacancy, and they are allowed to fill that vacancy at their leisure, even though in this case, we would hope that each individual council member and the mayor would see the efficacy of moving with alacrity to fill that position. So I'm one who's in favor of mirroring in some respects, unless there's good reason to change it, what each council member and the mayor are currently allowed to do. Want to make sure we get either by recruitment or by any individual's own desire to participate in the process, the best people or best persons qualified to participate in this activity. So I have a lot of confidence in our individual community members that have the skill set. And I also have a lot of confidence in the mayor and the fellow colleagues that they would encourage people who have certain expertise to apply for the position. Now, having said that, that's what you're elected to do. That's why people have reposed their confidence in you in the first place. So I'd like to mirror as best we can, Mayor, what we currently do to fill any vacancy with any of our committees or commissions. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Madison?
Yeah, I'm fine with it, Mayor. Just FYI, there's been tremendous interest in my district in this commission. I think I've got 10 or 12 applicants. I'm interviewing each of the applicants and hope to have a nominee by the end of February. So I hope we will move forward, expeditiously on this.
And so the question, I mean, one rationale for just having a deadline is we're trying to stand up a new commission. And, I think there's an issue of notice to members of the public that, there's a deadline, and understand that we're trying to move quickly to stand up the commission, responsibly, but quickly. Don't be surprised if we begin the appointment process after X date. What's the view there?
I don't have a problem for my part, Mayor, with, as mayor, you docketing the appointments.
Okay.
In terms of a deadline, that's a trickier question because each member will have his or her own process, So.
I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that our colleagues ask, we have some rationale to present.
Right.
And so, Mr. Kennedy, you're okay with it? Is there a motion?
I'm sorry, just for clarity, was it just that there would be an agenda item placed by the mayor, but not a specified date, and the notion would be no deadline specific, but the mayor would there would be an agenda item sort of made known that it would be at this date.
Yeah.
X.
We'll give people plenty of opportunity. I'll ensure that we get a date for after consulting with the council at our next meeting. We can all get an idea of where we are, and we'll make it known.
And this would be for applications to council member appointee seats or to also.
No, for the agenda, for agendizing.
No, I'm sorry. There are 11 seats, 8 appointed by council members. For the 3 by community-based organizations, that may take some time because the committee would need to vet.
I see your point. So there's a question there. Do we want to treat them differently? So there are 8 appointees from the council, and then 3. Do we want to treat those differently? Is the issue.
Well, I think
we want a deadline for the 3.
I think, Mayor, if I may, I think there is an expectation that, as I mentioned earlier, that the council and a division of the council of this body would just move with alacrity. And to the extent in your role as mayor, I think we were reposing in you a level of confidence to help us make it through here.
I understand.
So I'm of the mindset that Councilmember Madison shared, I do get the distinctions, and the distinctions are the council could conceivably move a lot faster on its own appointments as opposed to the appointments of the community groups, their recommendations to the council for appointment of community members from these various organizations. I think we do need to move with alacrity, and I'm confident that if you move this, it will get moved.
Okay. That's what we'll do. I understand the point, and we'll find a date to move it forward. And so this is, I think, I'll work with the city manager and the city clerk to give fair notice that we will be agendizing it, and when that date is set, and applicants can submit their applications to individual council members and to the committee staff for consideration for the 3 separate appointments.
Mayor, one practical issue is, I mean, I know this council member wasn't consulted on the application or even the timing of the release of the applications, which is fine. It seems to have worked out well. But is there a separate application for these organizational representatives?
Good point. No, I don't believe that we have a separate application. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager? We have one?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Javon. That's correct. There's just one application. And I think to the extent that council may want to, that may be something the committee can vet out, though.
Well, I don't think the committee needs to vet it out. I think the staff should just ministerially address that, because, you know, if we have applications coming in, for example, for the organizational appointments, we need to know which organization they're representing. I would think, you know, inherent in that would be the notion that the organization supports the person as its representative for this purpose. You know, if we use the same form, I mean, there's a place there for employment and all that, but it might be a board member from a particular organization or a consultant. I don't know that we've ever said that they have to be an employee per se. I just don't know.
And Councilmember Madison, I think that's a fair point, and I think that actually goes to the item A about appointment process for the community-based organization members, where I think we can receive direction from the council to move this along administratively, to ask 2 questions additionally, which would be, what organization are you from, and do they support your nomination? And I think that could be fair direction we could receive from the committee without the need for the reso to be amended.
Yeah, and it might be.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, not to, you know, nitpick, but it might be, you know, that they have the authority of that organization to seek the appointment.
And since we're on the subject, I do think it's an important point. Would you suggest that we have what would be authority to seek the nomination? Would it be the executive director, if there's an executive, chief administrative officer, or would it be the board of directors of the organization?
Well, Mayor, I think it depends, because I think the other thing about I seem to recall either there might have been discussion, or I think it might have been constrained originally to nonprofits, and then we wound up with the term community-based organizations. There are unincorporated associations that don't have a particular structure, and so I think to ask the question, do you have authority to seek the appointment, I think is probably about what we could reasonably request, given the breadth of the organizations submitting.
Yeah, Mayor, I think, Steve here. I think, and I'm happy to work with the city attorney's office, I think we should create a separate application for the community-based organizations. We should ask for some documentation evidencing that the organization is putting forth this person. As Javon points out, if it's a nonprofit, well, then there's, in the code, which shows the actions of a corporation. If it's not a corporation, then, some letter, something affirming that the organization is putting this name forward. So I think we can work that out pretty easily administratively.
fair enough. Mr. Kennedy?
More supportive of just having a supplemental to the existing applications on the street. I was not consulted, and I suspect that most, if not all of the council was not consulted either. But for those 3 appointees, it seems to me a supplement would be just fine, and that supplement, the rationale for that only applies to those 3 appointments.
I think that's what we're talking about, is we're going to put it in the hands of the staff to adjust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mayor.
Okay. Everyone's good with that?
Hey, so Mayor, can I ask a factual question? Have we received any community-based organizational applications yet? I don't believe I have, but I'm just curious.
Councilmember
Fair
Madison, I'm not aware.
Okay. Thank you.
If we have, then we should give them an opportunity to resubmit based on whatever adjusted application we come up with for those 3. Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm trying to contextualize it where it doesn't look like they're really 2 separate applications. In fact, the only piece to the current application is that if you are in this category of the 3, you have to provide us this additional information. That would make good sense, and the way we couch it is important, I think.
Yeah, I think there's additional information to be surfaced, if you will. And so the staff will give some thought to some of that information. If anybody has additional thoughts on what information, we can treat it. The staff, we're giving them the authority to treat it either as an amendment or,
Okay.
I'm sorry, a new application or blanking on the term you used, but
Amendment or whatever.
Yeah, let's just put it in their hands. I think they get the point. If anybody has more information that they.
I don't disagree with you, Mayor. All I'm saying, if it's out there on the street already, it seems to me
Yeah,
that you don't want to say to the world that we're going to inaugurate a new application.
I would like a clarification, and I hope that you guys would be amenable to this, that a person who is applying through a community organization could not then apply through 3 or 4 different community organizations. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people kind of cross over in these organizations and these groups.
And I think
So I don't know
Councilmember
if
Hampton, I
that
think
makes
we can keep that in mind in terms of how we drop the whatever revisions we do. And I think, Mayor, I don't know that we need a vote on that. I think we've received.
Oh, no, I don't think we need a vote. I was just.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that staff was clear with that, because there are some people that are, very ambitious and they're working in 4 or 5 different organizations, and, I just don't want 5 applications from the one person stating that they're representing 4 different organizations. Thank you.
well, and conversely, I do think that the organizational structure should be included in the application. So, if it's the same, as you say, Mr. Hampton, the same 4 or 5 people in multiple organizations nominating, different individuals, then there should be full transparency. And so information on the board of directors, information on their decision-making process, all of that should be included. Membership in multiple organizations should also be included. But, I think we get we'll put it in the staff's hand. I think we just want as much information as possible. Decision-making, who's appointing, multiple membership in all organizations, all of that. Are we okay with that? Okay.
Mayor, to be clear, do you want a motion that we?
No, I think that's just direction with related to item 1. We still haven't dealt with, well, actually we have dealt. So in terms of imposing a deadline, it sounds like we just want to follow our typical deadline. I will agendize, make known to the public what that deadline is. Can we do that by consensus?
Yes.
Not deadline, but agendized item. Okay. So we'll move on to item 3, and just so we're clear, there's no deadline, but I will work with the city manager and the city attorney's office to schedule a date for consideration of applications. First beginning with this committee and then to the full council.
And Mayor, I'm sorry, just to clarify, I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't know if you were looking for a formal vote on the deadline or whether it was just a discussion okay.
Discussion and consensus.
Thank you, Mayor.
Agendizing it will become the deadline.
Yes, in essence, it's being deferred to us, Steve. Next, parameters for attendance at commission meetings. Any issues there?
Mayor, if I could, my thing is, it might be that 3 unexcused absences that aren't consecutive should be, could be problematic. So.
I agree with you.
Can you just explain what you mean by that, Mr. Madison?
Yeah, in other words, the provision now apparently is under the code is that if a member has 3 consecutive unexcused absences, but that contemplates then that, and then certain steps could be taken to remove the member. But the commissioners, someone might make every 3rd meeting, miss 2/3 of the meetings, but not have missed 3 consecutive. Again, the way I think we've traditionally dealt with that is the nominating elected takes that up with the member. I've had that happen myself, where there have been issues that have come up and I've needed to replace commissioners. So I don't know if that's what we're banking on here. This commissioner.
Councilmember Madison, I think actually in the situation that you mentioned that doesn't have the 3 consecutive absences, there's actually a provision in the municipal code that says any member of the commission may be removed by the city council at its pleasure. So I think that would be where the council could take up that member independent of saying there are 3 unexcused absences. So that's sort of a specific basis to take up declaring a seat vacant. Another way to address it would be to remove a member at the council's pleasure, which is already in the code for the commission.
Okay, in that case, I wouldn't recommend doing anything further.
Okay. Mr. Hampton? Kennedy?
I'm concerned only mildly that we're not just going through affirming by asking someone to move these. So the full council will know that the weight of the Public Safety Committee is behind these matters. Obviously, I'm willing to defer to the chair, to the mayor on this, but I don't see a downside in doing that. But I'll defer to your judgment, Mayor.
Why don't we see if there's any action on this item, and then we can entertain a sweep motion for all of them. But any comments on item C? Mr. Madison is just suggesting that we leave it alone. Mr. Hampton, Mr. Kennedy, comments?
I don't have any comments. I mean, I do think it's problematic that someone could miss, 10 meetings, and if they're not consecutive, or so many meetings and not consecutive, they get to stay on. I think that'd be a disservice to the committee as well. So, but I guess we could look at it, and as a council, if we need to remove, then we can. But I just want to make sure that that's clear there when people are appointed to this commission that, we are taking what is it when you're in school? Your attendance, we are taking this attendance very seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I agree. I mean, this is something that is already addressed in our municipal code, and we can rely on that. And individual council members will have to have that conversation with their nominees. Okay, so I think that's.
I'll provide the sweet motion that you requested.
Okay,
If that's acceptable.
motion, we've already had taken action, well, we amended action A, right? Deferring of the application to amend it, consistent with the discussion. So there's a motion on item A, B, and C.
But Mayor, Mayor, if I could, what I'm hearing is that we're not directing anything different on B or C, so I don't see the need for a motion.
I think we're just confirming, just so that the council knows we considered them all, and we're just we're confirming that the only one we're making the amendment on is A, B, and C will stand as the council action. It's already been.
So
Okay,
we're only
I'll
voting on,
Sorry.
So,
we're voting on B and C right now?
no, we're voting on all three. We've amended A to defer to the staff the application, and we're leaving B and C alone, and that's the action of the committee.
And A, I voted no on. So I voted for B and C.
Okay. Why don't we just confirm B and C?
That's fine.
Okay. Are we okay with that, Javon? Is that enough? Mr. Rath?
We still have enough direction. So I think Mayor, if you wanted to take a vote on B and C to leave as is, no further action by the council, you can do that.
Is that your motion, Mr. Kennedy? Your second, Mr. Madison?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's roll call on B and C.
Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Chair Gordo.
Yes. Okay. I think that that completes all the direction. The others were in responses to questions that were raised. Unless anybody needs more information, I think the staff has presented in the report and in the earlier discussion some of the distinctions and involved with items D1 and D2.
Mayor, are you going to entertain a future discussion item or agenda item?
Can we do that?
Mayor, the rules and regs were something that we took to the council, or to the committee today, but at least at the council level, there was an interest from, I believe, at least one council member, or perhaps more, for the auditor to be retained to provide further input on the rules and regs for the commission before the council would adopt them. So I think the question is, would some options could be, does the committee want to see the rules and regs back at a date certain? Does the committee want to see the rules and regs back after the auditor's on board? Does the committee want to move the rules and regs back to the council?
What's the pleasure of the committee? I thought, so the rules and regs are, as they're stated in attachment 2, correct?
Yes, Mayor.
And those have been acted upon by the council.
No, they were not. The council
Oh, they were
adopted the
not.
resolution and they referred the rules and regs to this body. So this agenda item was sort of at its core to consider the rules and regs, and the council.
Well, that's not one of the, here it is. We skipped item 1 is what we did. I apologize. What's the committee's pleasure here?
I think the IPA should have a look at our rules and regs, make sure that we're best practices, right? I mean, that's my opinion.
Mr. Madison, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm fine with that, Mayor. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And I think we got some training of the commissioners in addition to the process of the appointments that will
Yeah.
consume some time, so.
Mr. Kennedy? So the question is, Mr. Kennedy, whether we appoint, I'm fine with having the regs come back to the council once we have input, once there's been training and we have input from the police auditor to ensure that the practices are best practices. Mr. Kennedy, did we?
Sorry about that, Mayor. I had to make a move.
Okay.
The question, Mayor?
Are we okay with item one? This is item one. We skipped over that, and the city attorney needs to give direction.
Well, the discussion has already been articulated by one of my colleagues was simply, does the IPA provide information that the council believes could be useful in us tying all of this together? The other competing issue obviously is are those who are saying, are we moving fast enough? And I'm not a soothsayer or someone who can just say, let's get it done yesterday. So some of this, I've got to rely on you and respect that to move us forward as fast as possible. But to the issue, I think I'm fine with it.
Okay. And so what's the motion? Mr. Hampton, did you want to make the motion? That the regs come back to the full council after?
After the IPA. Regs will come back to the full council after the IPA has the opportunity to review and make notes.
And and weigh in.
Make recommendations or weigh in on, what our best practices are.
Okay.
Also, the rules and regulations are, the training is part of that though too, right? Mr. Rob?
The training is not, it's not presently in the rules and regs. The training is actually in the municipal code, and it sort of describes a series of training that would be needed to be given to commissioners. And it says at a minimum provide certain training. I think one of the comments I think that you'd made earlier, Councilmember Hampton, was some exposition in the training on bias-based policing and anti-racism. And I think that's partly covered in constitutional rights and civil liberties, and it is sort of something that can be considered by staff in the context of formulating the 30 hours of training, certainly.
I brought that up,
Okay.
and I brought that up, and I was only sharing what Ed Washatka had provided for the organization or organizations he represents, and I thought it had value that the council, not one member, but the council may say that that makes good sense to have that kind of training. In our previous meetings, all of the council members at the time seemingly were saying, we want to make sure that there's a level of education and training that all of the commissioners have. And I think this is consistent with what our body as a whole shared.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor the point, but where we landed was staff would come up with the initial 30-hour recommendation for training, and then the commission would be able to augment that as needed, either on the advice of staff or the IPA or the committee itself. And so training is, yeah. The only question was, do we have the IPA weigh in? And I think that's the motion that's on the table.
Right, and the training piece.
Do you need a second for the motion, Mayor?
Please.
I second the motion from Council
The training. Cool, and I'm ready to vote. But the training piece is something, I've been asking about from the beginning, is implicit bias training as well as trauma-informed training. So if you think it would be covered, Mr. Rod, I appreciate that. I'm ready to vote.
Okay. And so there's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yeah.
Member Madison,
Yes.
Chair Gordo.
Yes. Okay, that completes the agenda. Mr. Kennedy, you had a question?
So Mayor, I sent you a note asking that we'd have a discussion on the process related to the selection of the fire chief. I am in no way questioning the city manager's ability to appoint any department head. But one of the questions that was answered was who was the community representative? And from my vantage point, the community wasn't represented. And that's not even a requirement that the community is represented on a assessment center, a panel, or interview process. And I think for the benefit of going forward, not going backwards, we need to at least weigh in and have some form of discussion on what it is we believe at a council level needs to take place, not just in appointing a.
Why don't we have the city attorney explain the process? We can agendize that in one of her 5-minute
Okay, Mayor.
discussions, what our process is, and she can report out the status of our charter and municipal code, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. In general, not for one appointment, but in general, what the authority of the council is versus the city manager, so that everyone is clear. Okay.
And then, one other item, I'm sorry. There was public comment as it related to the shooting of Anthony McLean, and I was wondering if there could be some update where we're at. I mean, I know that there's not a lot that can be shared because this is right now in the process of being investigated, but I think at a future meeting, there should just say, you know, whatever the update is, whatever we could share with the community, as well as if we have any updates on Christopher Blue's matter.
Procedure.
Yeah,
where we are.
procedure. That's it. Just
Wait.
updates where we
As
are.
it relates to Christopher Ballou, Mayor, can you share with the city attorney and just update? I mean, that matter has been going on, seems like over a year, and the council hasn't received some dispositive information, and maybe we don't have anything, but at least we need to be briefed on what we do have.
Let me work with the city attorney and the city manager on process and timing and how we best report that out. And there may not be a report out. I don't know. I'll have to consult the attorney and the city manager. Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Nope. Okay. So we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.